I acknowledge that I'm unfamiliar with your circumstances, but at first glance, your treatment of this man appears unfair, and I'm obliged to intervene.
War. War never changes. It's the ominous line that opens every game in the 26-year-old Fallout RPG series.
Pekne cool opener. Proste aj so záberom z Fallout jednotky. Ja mňa trošku mrzí, že tie power armory nie sú ako z Fallout jednotky, ale tak človek nemôže mať všetko.
While that may ring true for the tone of the eternal nuclear wasteland setting, thankfully the tide has largely turned for TV adaptations of video games. Following in the footsteps of HBO's The Last of Us and Netflix's Arcane, Prime Video now has itself an all-time great in Fallout, a confident and accomplished post-apocalypse show that proudly wears its heritage on its sleeve, quite literally when it comes to its iconic blue and yellow Vault-Tec costume design, while simultaneously being a compelling sci-fi drama all of its own.
Je to pravda. Ja z toho 6,5 dielu, čo som zatiaľ videl, mám pocit, že ten Fallout seriál je veľmi prístupný novým divákom. Fakt, že nepotrebuješ vedieť absolútne vôbec nič z hier. Stačí sa pozrieť, aj tak sa zabavíš.
It's not hard to see why Amazon went to bat for Fallout. This is a weird, often hyper-violent, sometimes satirical black comedy that sits comfortably next to The Boys. While never quite as puerile or gross as some of Vault's...
Osobne sa mi Fallout páči viac ako Boys, ale je to veľmi tesné. Fakt je to veľmi tesné, obidva seriály sú dobré.
Most extreme moments, Fallout consistently uses the darkness of its irradiated landscape to spin surreal jokes. From a talking brain in a jar to an organ-harvesting robot spouting the honeyed tones of Matt Berry.
I'm simply going to harvest your organs.
Produced by Westworld's Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy, Fallout is set canonically...
A jak o tom hovorí, že je to tvorcov Westworld, rozmýšľam nad tým, že či by malo zmysel pozrieť si Westworld, lebo nevidel som Westworld, videl som asi 3 diely a vykašľal som sa na to, že či by som si to nepozeral, že keď sa mi páčil Fallout, tak by sa mi asi páčil aj Westworld.
Within the world and continuity of the games, but its 8-episode story is not directly connected to anything you may have played. That means no prior experience is necessary in order to jump in with this entirely new cast of characters, starting with Ella Purnell's Lucy. Raised in Vault 33, one of many Fallout shelters built by the Vault-Tec company over 200 years ago, she's never known life outside its impressively realized steel and concrete walls. As such, she's an embodiment of the can-do spirit of pre-war America, which has been preserved for generations in this underground can. In a knowing echo of Fallout 3's opening, Lucy is forced to explore the surface when her father, played by Carl MacLachlan, goes missing. Bright and sparky, polite and friendly, she's totally unequipped for an adventure in the blasted California that awaits outside the vault's sealed door. The way Purnell is able to...
Dali si záležať na tom otváraní a zatváraní dverí, musím povedať, že to bolo presne ako z hier.
Project a delightfully naive sense of optimism among so much rusted devastation is the source of many early jokes.
Holy shit. You're an actual vault dweller.
I am.
Najprefáčenejší smiech ever.
But more importantly, it's the starting point for an engaging character arc that demands she open her eyes to a world where lies and deceit are everywhere and life is cheap. While Fallout does have well-drawn villains hiding in the shadows, the real antagonist is the wasteland itself and the dog-eat-dog attitudes it forces even our heroes to adapt.
I think everyone in this town would agree the force is justified. Unless you willingly stand down now.
Fucking vault dwellers.
But while Lucy's outsider status makes her the default protagonist, it's Aaron Moton's Maximus who proves Fallout's most compelling lead. Orphaned as a child, he's found refuge in the Brotherhood of Steel.
Súhlasím, 100% súhlasím. Najlepšia postava proste Maximus.
A faction of military zealots modelled on medieval knights. It's an organisation ill-suited to him. Maximus is an awkward, often cowardly man, lacking the bolshy confidence of the Brotherhood.
Ale nesúhlasím s tým, že je to cowardly man. Podľa, ako doslova som nevidel jediný príklad toho, že by bol cowardly.
It's power armored warriors, and that clash creates both great humour and drama. It's through a haphazard lie that he finds his footing in the story, twisting himself into something that he's not, and watching him desperately grapple with that precarious falsehood makes for Fallout's most fascinating moments. It's not always easy to root for Maximus, so flawed is his character, but that complexity made him the figure I found myself most invested in. Lucy and Maximus provide an interesting duality. She's only ever known the safety of the vault, and he's only ever known the brutality of the wasteland. But Fallout has another sharp contrast, that of pre- and post-nuclear destruction, explored fantastically through the Ghoul. Played by Walton Goggins, this 250-year-old irradiated...
OK, vlastne, keď nad tým tak rozmýšľam, tak táto Gogginsová postava je rovnako dobrá ako Maximus. Postavy sú dobré. Najviacej som sa obával, keď som videl prvý trailer na Fallout toho, že to bude mať hlavnú ženskú protagonistku a že mi to nebude sedieť. Nemám s tým najmenší problém. Aj Lucy je dobrá postava, úplne bez akýchkoľvek problémov.
Mutant is Fallout's most magnetic presence, a drugged-up lone wanderer with a give-no-shit attitude. Compared to Lucy and Maximus, the Ghoul is the least complex character due to a relatively shallow arc, but he's no doubt the most enjoyable to watch thanks to Goggins' all-in performance.
Knight Titus of the Brotherhood of Steel, stand down or be cut down.
You gotta be f***ing kidding me.
But the Ghoul is just one half of Goggins' role. Fallout frequently takes trips back in time to before the apocalypse to explore the life of the man the Ghoul used to be. An all-American movie star living a charmed life in retro-futuristic Hollywood, Cooper Howard initially seems the boring side of Goggins' dual role, there simply to establish humanity for a character later totally stripped of it. But this story gradually builds into a truly compelling mystery, providing Goggins a much-needed sense of purpose. This plotline is also where Fallout gets to deliver its source material signature satire, with an anti-capitalism message that's suitably haunting. Cooper's life could have felt relatively divorced from the main events of Fallout, so different is the visual and narrative fabric of the two, but the past directly connects to the present in a much more interesting way than mere backstory. This design is one of Fallout's greatest strengths. Even what can initially feel like superfluous strands, such as the continuing story of Vault 33 after Lucy has left, turn out to be vital building blocks. Everything is propellant and accelerates towards a killer finale, and while there are a couple of episodes in the second half that slightly falter in terms of balance between storylines and momentum, this is an otherwise superbly...
Nesúhlasím. Fakt nemám pocit, že v druhej polovici by seriál strácal tempo. To vôbec.
...structured show. Every episode tells its own tale from beginning to end, such as Lucy's run-in with the aforementioned organ harvester, or an encounter with a giant mutant salamander. And while these are clearly smaller parts of a greater whole, they still work as satisfying stories in their own right. In other words, the show is crafted like a chain of RPG quests. It's a welcome change of pace.
To ma ani nenapadlo. Hovoria, že celý seriál je koncipovaný ako reťaz RPG questov. Naozaj. Mám pocit, že sa celý čas naháňajú za tou istou questovou linkou, ale možno by stalo nad tým trošku pofilozofovať.
From the mushy plotting and interchangeable episodes of so many other streaming series. That considered, it's baffling that all 8 episodes are launching simultaneously. If Fallout were a weekly show, we'd have the fun and suspense of discussing it relentlessly between debuts. One of the greatest challenges Fallout faced was turning the world of the games into a live-action universe. Thanks to a truckload of Amazon money and talented production designers...
Jo, ty kokos, akože... Dívaš sa na každú jednu scénu, obzvlášť tie, ktoré sú outdoory, s nejakými kulisami, ako napríklad nejaké to wastelandové mestečko a fakt cítiš z toho tie prašuldy, čo do toho natlačili, ako muselo to mať extrémny budget, netuším koľko, ale určite to nebol lacný seriál na nakrútenie.
Though Nolan Joy and showrunners Geneva Rob...
Už teraz údajne majú dohodnutý odpustok od štátu Kalifornie na 150 miliónov na daniach, ak to budú natáčať v Kalifornii. Takže fakt, lacné to nemôže byť a pravdepodobne už teraz sa môžeme tešiť na druhú sériu.
Robertson Dworet and Graham Wagner have done an admirable job of it. This is a wonderfully tangible apocalypse, full of colourful oddballs and soundtracked by the 1950s best bops. Every space bursts with personality, much of that arriving via the astonishing attention to detail in all the items, weapons and recognisable iconography. Nuka-Cola bottles litter shelves, characters heal themselves with stimpaks, and Vault 33 is inch for inch damn near perfect, right down to the emergency override switches. You don't need to know the games to appreciate the craft behind it, but if you do, there's a lot to love. By far and away the most enjoyable thing.
Je to unikátne umenie, keď tvorcovia dokážu spraviť niečo podľa hernej predlohy. To je už prvé umenie samo o sebe. Druhá vec je, keď to dokážu ešte spraviť tak, že je to zaujímavé aj pre divákov, ktorí nie sú poškvrnení predlohou. To znamená, že hneď pokryli 2 polia, ktoré sú fakt ťažké v dnešnej dobe, lebo nemáš fakt veľa vecí, ktoré by boli kvalitné kinematografické spracovania videoherných predloh. Máš v podstate v poslednej dobe Last of Us a máš Fallout. No a hovorím, Last of Us nebol taký imponujúci pre divákov, ktorí nehrali hry. A mám plno kamošov, ktorí proste to neboli schopní pozerať. Nedostali sa cez ten geovský diel napríklad v Last of Us. A mne to až tak nevadilo, lebo som niekoľkokrát hral predlohu a teda čakal som veci, ktoré prídu aj za tým, čo sa mi dajme tomu možno nepáčilo. Ale vo Falloute je to rovina proste. Stále kvalitka, ide sa ďalej. Nemáš tam hluchý moment, alebo nemáš tam niečo, čo by ťa vyslovene hnevalo.
Thing though is the Brotherhood of Steel's T60 power armor, which is an absolute delight to watch in action. Where you'd expect something ripped from the games in its computer-generated feel as well as its faithful design, instead...
Aj keď nechápem, prečo power armory lietajú. to neviem, či bolo niekedy v nejakom Falloute lietajúce power armory.
Instead, we get a largely physical prop that feels incredibly present and powerful. And while Fallout isn't really an all-out action show, when the violence kicks off, it's at its best when the T60 is involved. That's when the bloody mess perk is activated and the delightfully gloopy gore effects get wheeled out. These characters, locations, and situations all feel authentic to Fallout. And yes, while the immaculate, game-accurate production design is partially responsible for this, most of the show's ultimate success is down to the work of Robertson Dworet and Wagner, and their efforts to make an original story that's distinctly Fallout. It's in direct contrast to Paramount's dull Halo series, which fails to capture the urgency and spectacle of its source material, despite all the ripped from the game's armor designs and FPS action sequences. Fallout scripts nail the humor, capture the satire, and understand the topics of the series, all without leaning on any pre-existing story. This could have been a live-action replica of game characters and cutscenes you've seen before. Instead, it's a fresh and essential story that uses a new medium to enrich the Fallout universe for both die-hard fans and rolls out a welcome mat for new audiences.
Na čo tomu dá verdikt?
Well, now that's a very small drop. In a very, very large bucket of drugs.
A bright and funny apocalypse filled with dark punchlines and bursts of ultra-violence, Fallout stands up there with The Last of Us among the best game adaptations ever made. Brilliantly constructed, its 3 distinct leads travel through cleverly linked storylines that build to a fantastic finale. Along the way, there's a megaton of treats for long-term fans thanks to immaculate production design and attention to detail, but never at the expense of making this an ideal starting point for the uninitiated. It's another special effort from Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy, and easily earns
Fair enough.
big
Fair
thumbs
enough.
up.
Ja sa každopádne nemôžem dočkať. Ako to dneska dopozerám, no chýba mi ešte 1,5
For
dielu
more video
dokonca.
game TV, check out our
Takže
reviews
tak.
of Halo Season 2 and Pokemon Horizon.
Pre vás, čo vy už ste videli Fallout, ako sa vám páči? A obzvlášť tých, čo ste videli Fallout aj Last of Us, čo sa vám páči viacej? Páči sa vám Fallout viacej, alebo sa vám páči Last of Us? Ja som veľmi rád, že tento seriál vznikol a musím povedať, že asi osobne sa mi páči viacej ako Last of Us. To je asi také hodnotenie za mňa, ja som veľmi spokojný.